Yo, this is Mike with Comic Lore, and today we're hopping into Captain America 1 with an amazing ending that I don't want to spoil, so let's hop right into it. We open with this kid, he's staring off into the distance and he's having this internal dialogue, and it says, "You think you're prepared to see death, but violent death, a man taking a man's life, it's a very different thing. It changes you in ways you know immediately, in ways you discover later in the darkness, when you're as alone as you've ever been. And when death happens on a massive scale, you fight the terrible thought that soon comes. Are you worth saving? And if we are, am I willing to become the thing that I hate to save us? Am I willing to be a killer?" And you look in the background and what you realize that this kid is actually near ground zero during the attack on 9/11. So we have our time setting. We're in 2001, and this kid just witnessed the biggest terrorist attack that has ever happened on American soil. And that's the backdrop for this new Captain America story. And what we do is we transition to some people talking in the diner. They're talking about the new Stark phone, which is mirroring the iPhone in our current timeline. And they're having a discussion about just things in the city and how they're changing. And one of the patrons is just discussing how he's not happy to see the city change because it used to be a good place. He's missing the good old days. And the waiter is telling him, or the waitress tells him, basically, if you're living in the past, then you're going to be depressed. And if you're too focused on the future, you're going to be anxious. You need to be in the present moment, because the things that we think were so good in the past, were they really that good? And as he's saying this, there's a police officer, and on his radio scanner, he hears 10-10 shots fired. And that's when we see somebody turn their head and look to the police officer. And we obviously know that this man is Captain America. And we go to the scene of the shooting, and one of the officers is taking care of someone who's been shot. And she's screaming out, "Hey, he took my bike. He said he's going to the UN. We need some help." And the person she's talking to says, "Well, where's the UN building?" And she's like, "You don't know where the UN building is? Aren't you a cop?" And Steve Rogers opens up his jacket and he's like, "Well, actually, I'm not. He's Captain America, but he is here to help." And he goes flying on his motorcycle, or on a police motorcycle, that he takes and commandeers to help support them. The jacket, trench coat flies off, and you see Captain America fully suited, shield on his back, as he's chasing down the shooter. And he's wondering if the shooter is a lone wolf or if he's a part of some bigger plan. And as Steve Rogers is chasing down the shooter, he notices that this guy's well trained. Not only is he able to use the bike effectively, but while he's using the bike, he's also taking pot shots and making it difficult for Steve Rogers. And so Steve Rogers realizes with all this traffic, he's not going to be able to effectively take this guy down and chase after him. So what he decides to do is go airborne, and we get this amazing shot of Steve Rogers just wrecking someone's car and going full evil Knievel in the air, throwing his shield, knocking the gunman off his shield. And he realizes at that time that it's not just a gunman. This is a suicide bomber. He has a bomb strapped to his chest. And if you look at the timer, it has about a minute left before it explodes. And Steve Rogers is so concerned and hoping that that bomb doesn't explode and create a mass casualty event. And luckily, it doesn't. And Steve Rogers, he flies off his bike to give chase to the gunman and the guy holding the suicide vest. And a bystander helps him, picks up his shield, and Steve Rogers thanks him as he's running by, and he's thinking to himself, do they still have God in this world? And is he listening? Because it's so much bleaker and darker than what he was expecting after being woken from his frozen state. And the gunman, he's running towards the UN, and there's two guards outside, and they're have their guns drawn, and they're ready to shoot at the gunman. And at that time, Steve Rogers comes in and he tells them, "Hey, he's got a bomb." And I'm like, I have a bomb. And the police officers, one is wondering who's coming up, and the second one is kind of in awe and disbelief, and he's like, "Whoa, is that actually him? Like, is that actually Captain America?" And Captain America walks up and he's really calm and actually really nice to the guy. And he tells him, "You're military." And the gunman is kind of taken aback. And he's like, how did you know? How could you guess that I was military? And Captain just tells him, "I know a military man when I see one, service and rank." And the gunman tells him, "Army second lieutenant, 2 tours in the Gulf." Captain America goes over his credentials and what he did in World War II. And the gunman is shocked. He's like, "This can't be real," because in this universe, Steve Rogers and Captain America, they haven't really been out long enough for people to accept that Captain America's back. And Captain America lets him know that nothing is impossible. And I know you're going through a lot. I know you're dealing with a lot of PTSD from your tours of service and serving this country, and you feel like you've been left behind. You feel lost. And this is a feeling that isn't rare among service members, which is sad to say that they give so much for our country. They lose body parts, and some give the ultimate sacrifice. Some lose friends, family members, and sometimes they're disillusioned and wonder what it was all for. And Steve Rogers is able to talk this man down by giving him compassion and understanding for his position and where he's going through. And he drops the detonator and then he salutes Steve Rogers. And as he's taking off his jacket to remove the bomb, it goes on a fritz. And you hear someone come down and they say, "Digital device, remote solutions. Sorry, I'm late." And we have Iron Man who's coming down to give support to Steve Rogers. And so Captain America and Iron Man, they hand over this guy to the police, and as the police are taking him away, they have their own conversation. And Captain America is talking to Iron Man about what the United Nations is and how it's made to try to put an end to future wars, because that is actually how it was started, as a continuation of the idea that started with the failed League of Nations after World War I. So United Nations is like the second attempt to have a communal place where people can talk and hopefully prevent future conflicts. And Iron Man tells Cap, "Hey, that's kind of a big reason as to why it was founded." But there's still this debate about if it's actually effective. And he pleads with Captain America that he knows it's only been a week, but that he should really come and join up with the Avengers, and that the benefactor of the Avengers, Tony Stark, has a lot of money and can make sure that they have everything that they need. So I don't know if this is just Iron Man protecting his secret identity because he doesn't yet know if he can fully trust Cap, or if this is them setting us up for a reveal that in this universe, Iron Man isn't actually Tony Stark. But I'm excited to find out. Hopefully, we keep Tony Stark, because I love the dichotomy between Tony Stark and Captain America whenever we get a story with the Avengers. But Captain America politely declines because he says, "You know, I got to go to where I know home is. And I lost everything else. I lost all my friends. I lost all my connections. And the only home I know is the military. So that's where I'm going to go." And so we jump over to that same kid who we saw in the beginning of the story. And he's standing outside of a recruitment office and he won't leave. And they're trying their hardest to convince this kid that he's not cut out to be in the military, because he has asthma, he can barely see, he's a weakling. But this kid is determined. He doesn't want to give up. He really wants to go and fight and the war in the Middle East, because he wants to do right by the people who were hurt on 9/11. He has this patriotic duty, this desire that he feels is just to go and to protect people by going into the armed services. And this really mirrors the starting point of Steve Rogers back in the day when he first became Captain America. He was a scrawny kid. He didn't have the brawn, but he had the heart. And that was what led him to become Captain America and a legend. We go from there to Captain America going through a series of tests, and people are talking and commenting on his results. And they're saying he's the perfect human specimen. We can't match against DNA, obviously, but this man has all the markings. And we see Captain America working on a pommel horse, showing his agility, and they know for a fact that, hey, we are dealing with the real deal Captain America. He is back. And he fell into the Atlantic Ocean and froze, but somehow he stayed alive. And the Avengers, they came, they pulled him out, and it was only a week ago. But now he's here. And so we get the timeline of how long Steve Rogers has been here on Earth after being thawed out, and it's been 1 week. Someone walks in to speak with him, and we learn that it's General Thaddeus Ross. And if you know anything about the Marvel mythos, you know that he's actually Red Hulk. So when he'll be introduced in this story, or if he'll be introduced in this story, will be exciting to see. But he comes and he wants to ask Captain America, why are you here? You know, you come to the Pentagon. This is a place that when you first left, it didn't exist. After World War II, the Pentagon was created. So during the fighting, when Captain America was in his heyday, he didn't know anything about the Pentagon. It wasn't a thing yet. So why did you come here? And Captain just tells him, like, this has been such a crazy week. I've seen some really amazing things, but I've also seen some kind of shady things, and I don't know what else to do. I've lost all of my friends. I've lost Bucky. My parents were dead before I enlisted, and any friends I once had, they're all gone. The only thing that mattered to me that still exists, still does what I need it to do, that can make sense of this world, is here with the men and women who serve. And Thaddeus Ross is excited to hear that. And he tells him, I understand more than you know, Captain Steve Rogers. Welcome back to the United States Armed Forces. When you're ready, soldier, I believe I have your first mission. And from there, we again go back to our first kid who we saw in the beginning of this comic. But now he's looks like he's in like basic training. We see guys in fatigues and he's on the phone. And he says to himself, I've never faulted those who stayed at home. I look at the men in the trenches and can see those who should have stayed behind. A fear that runs through them too deep to face the horrors of war. I couldn't stay behind, not while they were out there. And while he's having this internal dialogue, you realize that no one is on his side. His mom is against him and saying, why are you there? This war is racist. It is attacking people who don't deserve to be attacked. Not only that, your brother lost his life in Kuwait, and now you're putting me through something similar. On the other side, you have his fellow soldiers who are not accepting him, and they're bullying him, and they're telling him, hey, come outside because it's about time for your afternoon beating. But this kid is not, he's not a coward. So we can go over to the soldiers outside, and they're training in hand-to-hand combat. And he again starts to think to himself. He says, my life has been a succession of bullies. They seek out the weak, and I just radiated weakness. But I fought back. I always fought back. It didn't matter that I rarely won. And when the world turned dark and the bullies gathered, I did what I always done. I lifted my fist and prepared for the pain. And so in this panel, we learn that the name of this unknown person is Colton. And Colton is used to being picked on, used to being bullied, but again, similar to Captain America, he doesn't back down. He doesn't care if he's going to lose. He's still going to stand up for what he thinks is right. And that's exactly, unfortunately, what happens here. He gets the snot kicked out of him by this bully. After that, we move over to the Fantastic Four, and they're fighting a creature that's obviously being controlled by Mole Man. And as they're fighting him, they're kind of not doing the best. Obviously, it's the Fantastic Four, and eventually they would be able to overpower this creature from Mole Man. But Captain America comes in with some timely assistance, and he tells them, I think this gentleman is the source of your problems. And then he asks if he can speak to someone called Mr. Fantastic. And so after taking care of Mole Man, you have Mr. Fantastic and Steve Rogers. They're going to a diner, and he's talking to Mr. Fantastic to get some information on his upcoming mission. And we learned that his upcoming mission is going to be putting him in direct confrontation with Victor Von Doom. And so, if you haven't been reading the comics from Doctor Doom, One World Under Doom, there was an amazing story where Doctor Doom actually won. He took over the world, people were on his side, but Doctor Doom, being Doctor Doom, always falls victim to his hubris, right? So this storyline is going in tandem with Doctor Doom gaining the trust and power over the Earth. So at this point, Mr. Fantastic starts to give Captain America a little bit of a background about Doctor Doom, how they went to college together, how he's this really intelligent guy, but he's hiding behind his mask and he's hide behind his armor, and that magnifies the things about him that aren't very good. And according to Steve, he just sees him as another authoritarian leader who needs to be stopped because he destroyed the US embassy, he did a coup in his own country, and now it's up to Steve to put an end to this. And Mr. Fantastic wants to offer the support of the Fantastic Four, but we learn that the UN has passed a law saying that superpowered beings aren't allowed to engage in military conflicts in foreign soil. However, Steve Rogers is given kind of a cutout and grandfathered in, no pun intended, because of his previous goodwill, one, and two, because other countries have been also developing a super soldier serum, and they don't want to give up on that super soldier serum for themselves. And in the midst of this conversation, somebody comes up and they think they notice Mr. Fantastic and try to speak with him, and then he melts his face kind of to look like an old man so that he can just blend in and kind of have some alone time. And as Steve Rogers and Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards, are walking away, he kind of explains that they don't have these secret identities, so he uses that as a way to be able to blend in public because Sue, she goes invisible. Johnny, he likes the attention, and Grim, well, Grim is a big rock, so there's nothing he can do to hide the way he looks. And he continues to tell Steve Rogers that the biggest thing about Victor Von Doom is that his ego is always his undoing. His hubris is always his undoing. And the armor and the mask, those boost his self-perception of his own greatness. And that's what makes Doctor Doom so formidable. And if you've ever read a Doctor Doom story, he backs it up. Doctor Doom is one of my favorite villains. And as this is going on, you see that Mr. Fantastic pulls out an action figure, and it's an action figure of Steve Rogers. And he tells Steve Rogers that his dad loved Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers is more than just some guy. He was a symbol, he was a hero. And so many kids and families and people looked up to him and what he represented and what he stood for. And as they're looking out over the Statue of Liberty, Steve Rogers asks, do they also make a doll for Bucky Barnes? And Mr. Fantastic lets him know, hey, we actually call these action figures, but of course they did. And after this, we go back and we have that same kid, Colton. He's in his dorm and he's reading. It looks like it's supposed to be lights out because he's the only one with a flashlight and she's reading his book. And he's having this internal dialogue and he says, there was no question in my mind. I was going to serve. Steve Rogers, the bully kid from Brooklyn, was going to serve. And I wouldn't take no for him. So that's him getting his book snatched away by his drill sergeant. His drill sergeant then takes him outside and starts telling him, you know what? The other recruits are correct. You're going to get somebody killed. You're not fit to be here. You shouldn't be here. And he starts beating the crap out of this kid, Colton. But Colton keeps telling him, because everyone calls him a crybaby, and he looks at him, he says, I'm not crying, and I'm not going to leave anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. And as this is happening, the other soldiers are looking as Colton is getting hit repeatedly by the drill instructor. And they're like, man, he finally snapped. And they're like, good. You can see that Colton has no allies. Everyone is hoping he will wash out and hoping that he will fail. And then we go back to Captain America, and he's inside a museum about himself. And he's thinking, my life on display. Every letter I wrote home to my old teacher, Mrs. Crossley, adding to a mythology that grew while I froze in the darkness. In the war, I was a child becoming a man. I led, but I was just another soldier trying to survive, trying to help ensure the world had freedom. But now the world has built me up into something more. Can I embrace it? Do I fight it? Will allowing myself to be a living legend change me? Will the stars and stripes be my armor? So he's worried, is he gonna let this get to his head like Victor Von Doom has? Is he gonna fall victim to that human emotion of pride and hubris? Then again, we bounce back over to Colton, and he's lying down in a hospital bed after getting the crap beat out of him. And he's reaching over to his inhaler, and someone comes in and helps him out. And they say, it must be tiring being so damn feeble, your soul, your spirit wanting more, but your body saying no. But you didn't sit down. It's not in you, is it? So what if I told you, Mr. David Colton, the weakest damn recruit I've ever witnessed, that I could cure that asthma? And so obviously he's excited to hear that. His eyes perk up, and we jump over to a mission briefing before Captain America is going into Latveria. And in Latveria, he's going to be looking for a man named Marius Wolf, who is the head of the Latverian resistance. And so as he's going in, he's told that he's going to have a team, and he's going to just have a small team to break into Latveria. And his team starts to come out, and they start to introduce themselves. And the first person on his team is Terry Mendoza, and he says, folks call me Chill. And after that, he also meets Julie Slade, who is a marksman for SEAL Team X, the Howling Commandos, which, if you remember, was the name of Captain America's old unit before he was frozen in ice. And he tells Slade that you have a lot to live up to, soldier. And Slade tells him, I'm not a soldier, I'm a Marine. And so Steve Rogers assumes, oh, so we're going to have a group of three. This is our crew. We're able to, ready to go. And they say, no, we're not done yet. We have one more person. And that person walks in, and they're also carrying a Captain American shield on their back. And it goes back to the thought bubble of David Colton. To answer the question, can I stop the bullies? Can Captain America make the world a better place? So now we have two Captain Americas who are going to be working side by side, and I'm really excited to see how this goes because we know we did have U.S. Agent who took the serum in a previous Marvel storyline, and he was just all crazy and ended up becoming a villain and later becoming a member of the Thunderbolts, becoming sort of an anti-hero. But we've never seen two pure of heart Steve Rogers-esque characters coexist before in this manner. So I'm really excited to see how they're going to evolve this over the rest of this comic, and also as we blend into the Armageddon event that is going to be starting this summer, that's going to reshape the entire Avengers landscape. So if you like this, leave a like, subscribe. We love to have you. Peace.